northern Israel, live, not very close to the front, not very far from the front. I guess it's as the crow flies, it's minutes, not hours, that's for sure. So the question is, will the United States support Israel directly or indirectly if Israel attacks Iran now that Syrian skies are wide open for the Israeli Air Force? What do I mean by that? Well, the IAF recently cleared out anywhere between 80 to 86%, maybe more, of the Syrian military, what remained of its assets on the ground, tanks, naval ships, airplanes, helicopters, anti-aircraft missile batteries, the whole deal. Literally just wiped them off the map, right? And they did it within like 24 hours. And then they spent a couple more days running cleanup and mopping up operations to really make sure they got as much as they could. But already within the first day, they took out an estimated 80 to 86% of their capabilities, which is a stunning feat by itself, right? They hit hundreds of sites across Syria where there were massive amounts of military equipment, but it had been abandoned, right? So the stuff was literally like shooting ducks in a barrel, or fish in a barrel, ducks in a barrel. It was like shooting fish in a barrel, right? It was just, the stuff was just laying there, not being defended. So it was just no reason for Israel to let it just sit there and get taken over by whoever the next bad guys were to come around. Here's the thing: if the people taking over aren't bad guys, then they don't need to worry about it, right? They don't need to worry about having that stuff, because who's going to attack them, right? Iraq is not going to attack Syria. If they do, well, good luck to them. That's not going to happen. There is a minor but powerful U.S. presence in Syria that would not allow that to happen. There's also diplomatic issues that would not allow that to happen. Like an unwarranted attack, if they just like blatantly invade Syria for no reason. And they have no interest in doing that. They can barely control their own country. Lebanon is not going to attack Syria, right? Who's going to attack Syria? Hezbollah? Hezbollah is having a hard enough time staying alive. They couldn't even come to the aid of Assad when he was getting wiped out. Iran isn't going to attack Syria. If anything, they will try to infiltrate it and try to get more influence again in the country by paying off some rebel groups that they might be able to turn, or who knows what, right? It's doubtful, but they might be able to. And don't count them out. They know how to play the long game of chess, right? Israel's not going to invade Syria. Has Israel maybe taken a few spots inside the buffer zone, the demilitarized zone? Yeah, they've openly said that, and they said they did it in coordination with the UNDOF, right? The observer force of the United Nations is in the demilitarized zone. The UN still lambasted Israel for doing it, even though Israel coordinated it with them. No, but that's not okay. Israel bad. Anything it does to defend itself bad. Israel was condemned by the United Nations for taking up a few square kilometers of Syrian territory where nobody lives, like on the top of a mountain that nobody lives on, right? It's purely for defensive position. And they took it just to be able to observe and make sure nobody from Syria with bad intentions is coming towards the Israeli border. And you got to remember, in the past year, we've seen a number of attacks from Syria into Israel by rebel groups. Israel fired back at them. Right? It wasn't the Syrian military shooting at Israel. It was Hezbollah sometimes, but it was a bunch of other rebel groups too, including ones that are affiliated with the now supposed liberators of Syria. So, of course, Israel has to take a defensive position. It didn't just randomly, decide, oh, let's just go take some land. Let's go have an adventure into Syria. No. Israel sent soldiers, elite soldiers at that, specifically to guard posts that had been abandoned on the top of Mount Hermon, where there literally is no one on the Syrian side. Right? There isn't a village there. There isn't a town. There isn't a city. There's nothing. There aren't any goat herders walking around there. There's a bunch of landmines, and there's a bunch of guard posts. That's it. So Israel was accused of invading Syria and taking all this land. Meanwhile, Turkey, which is doing a lot of the accusing about Israel and saying Israel is interfering with Syria, Turkey has taken over 9,000 square kilometers of northern Syria. That's about half the size of Israel. Israel's only like 22,500 square kilometers. And Turkey's taken over more than like 9,500 or 9,000 square kilometers of northern Syria because of the Kurds, right? So Turkey is saying to Israel, you guys are bad because you've taken over like 9 kilometers or something. Maybe it's 100 square kilometers or whatever it is. It's a tiny little strip of land. But Turkey can take over 9,000 square kilometers of northern Syria, literally half the size of Israel, right? 2/3 of the size of Lebanon. And that's okay. Sure. The hypocrisy at the UN knows no bounds. So the question is, will the U.S. actually... Can I do a shout out from Mexico? Sure thing. Shout out Mexico. Tadeo from Mexico. Hello there. Hey, Santi. Novo inscrito. Hey, thanks, Brito Sousa. Appreciate it. Yeah. So what is Israel going to do right now? Are they going to attack Iran? Because Israel now has control over the Syrian skies. What do I mean by that? Well, since Israelis took out the military of Syria, there is literally nothing stopping Israel from flying over Syria and doing whatever it needs to keep its own skies even safer from an even greater distance. And I don't know if you can tell, but there are a lot of jets flying over my head at the moment. En route to and from Syria and Lebanon, they're flying much more actively than they normally do. They're always active, especially during times of war. But there are some times when they're, some days when they're more active than other days. There have been a bunch of rocket attacks, not from Lebanon. That ceasefire still kind of holds. But there have been rocket attacks in the Gaza border area, attacks by Hamas, shooting rockets and missiles, and mortars towards Ashkelon and a bunch of settlements right there on the northern border of the Gaza Strip, where they frequently shoot little rockets or mortars too. And that happened in the last hour, on Shabbat in the evening, as people are having their family dinners and all that. Suddenly, sirens got to run to shelter. Unfortunately, the people there are so used to it. For them, it's not a year war. If you live in the town surrounding Gaza, we're now in like the 23rd year of nonstop attacks. People forget that. 24th year. In September 2000, Yasser Arafat launched the second intifada against Israel, a year before 9/11. And when he did that, well, the Palestinian groups in Gaza, which at the time included his PLO and other associated groups, as well as Hamas and Islamic Jihad and all these other groups that were operating in Gaza, began firing rockets on a regular basis. First, it was a few times a week, then it became daily, and it became multiple times a day. And it got into such a habit that a lot of people, I wouldn't say with careless abandon ignore the sirens, but a lot of people are, they're very situationally aware, and they also don't necessarily always go and spend the full time in the shelter every time they hear a rocket, because otherwise it'd be practically impossible to go about their day on days when they hear like 30, 40 rocket attacks in a day, right? Sirens going off. Because we're talking about very small towns and villages, so every time one of those sirens goes off, practically the whole town has the siren going off. And even if you're in like Ashkelon, half the city's got the sirens going off. If you're in Ashdod, same thing. So it's very impractical, even though they're for your safety. If you're trying to work or something, and there's sirens going off every 10 minutes, I mean, if you're working outdoors, there's a lot of chance you're not going to be able to get through shelter within a minute, or even less, because they're like 15 to 20 seconds away from things landing. So they're kind of really used to it in a terrible way, that they've gotten so jaded and so desensitized. I mean, yes, people still go to shelters there, but not everybody and not all the time. In fact, some people go look for it. They go out to go to their windows to see if they can see it incoming. And if they see it incoming, obviously if it's coming towards them, they go run away. But if they see it's going in another direction or whatever, they'll film it. They'll do all the silly nonsense that they frankly shouldn't do. Because there have also been a lot of cases where people go and look, and then they don't notice one is actually coming right towards them. And there have been incidents where, rockets blew up like right over the heads of people as they were trying to film rockets that were much further away. They didn't notice there was one flying right at them. It just happened to blow up right over their head or something, or right under them, or right next to them. War is bloody dangerous, right? And people get desensitized to that because after a while, it's like, listen, you got to live a little, right? You can't just constantly be running in fear, or forget fear, just constantly be running to get to shelter, to not get hit by one of those complaint cylinders. So now Israel has an opportunity, in theory, to hit Iran hard, right? And make them feel the pain, as it were, and possibly attack their nuclear sites, because they're perceived to be greatly humiliated for having lost their proxies in Hamas, in Hezbollah, and in Syria. They've lost all those. They're gone. So what is left of the Iranian empire? Well, what's left is they still have a nuclear program. Whether they have weapons or not, who knows? I'm of the mindset that they most likely have some weapons already made. Are they ready to be affixed to ICBMs? I don't know. Maybe not. But I would not doubt it. I would kind of frankly be surprised if they didn't have any at all at this point. But so Israel is apparently weighing the option of attacking Iran. Would it be an unprovoked attack? Look, you could say it would be. Even if it is it justifiable to take out Iran's nuclear capabilities now that they have lost the majority of their proxies? What do they have left? The Houthis? I mean, it's not like Hezbollah has disappeared. They're very much not disappeared, but they are greatly reduced in their capacity. Same with the Hamas, right? So now the question is, what are the Houthis going to really take over and attack Israel from 1,000 miles away every time? It's not a very practical thing to do. So will they see to it? Will they take over by doing a hit? Well, I mean, they do have open skies right now, right? New subscribe. Well, thank you. Thank you for the new subscribe. They do have open skies over Syria, which means they can fly really close to Iran now without anybody blocking them. They don't have to fly over Jordan. They don't have to fly over most of Iraq. They can just fly over like the little northern part of Iraq where there's a bunch of Kurds who are in theory friendly to Israel or not hostile to Israel, because Israel and the Kurds have some kind of a history of Israel helping out the Kurds in a bunch of different things. Most recently, they helped them when there was that big earthquake in Syria and Turkey, right there in that border area. And a lot of Kurds were massively, a lot of Kurds lost their lives and a lot had their homes damaged, and a lot of them needed rescuing and medical attention. And once again, Israel sent its world-renowned rescue teams to Turkey to help the Kurds on the Turkish side of the border as much as they could, just like they did when they sent them to, the Miami Beach. Was it Miami Beach? Somewhere in Florida. I think it was Miami Beach. A few years back when that building collapsed and the Israelis went there to try to rescue as many people as they could from that collapsed building. So, again, will Israel take advantage of the situation? Who knows? We don't know. If they did and it doesn't go well, and Iran happens to have some serious firepower that it has not yet launched at Israel, could that be a big disaster? It might be. If Trump comes into power and tells Israel, yeah, go for it, let's hammer these guys, and even assists Israel with, military planning, strategy, and Air Force equipment, planes, and who knows what else, satellite imagery, who knows whatever they got to share intelligence-wise, they might help them. But again, could it trigger a bigger and wider conflict? Very possibly, right? Yes, Syria might. Iran probably right now is scrambling to beef up its nuclear program because it's lost all of its proxies across the region that were giving it cover and time to build up its nuclear stuff more quietly. Now they don't have time to do it quietly. They either build it and get it built, or somebody takes them out, takes out their production facilities and prevents them from actually being able to build it. What will happen? Time will tell. What I can tell you, I hope happens is, I sincerely hope that whatever happens, whatever actions happen, that we will eventually, and sooner rather than later, have a real and lasting peace and prosperity in the Middle East and across the world. Because war sucks. And it is not a wonderful thing. It is not noble and glorious and courageous. And it is nice when there is no war. But a bad peace is not necessarily better than when you have a war. Because a bad peace can be filled with violations of that peace that involve a lot of violence. And we don't want that. I don't like violence. Violence is bad. And when you have a fake peace masking as peace, and the diplomats are preventing the soldiers from doing their job to end the violence, that's bad. That's worse, in my opinion, because it leads to more and destruction. Anyway, that's going to do it for now, folks. I'll talk to you later. Peace. Shalom.